are
Hi, we are the
Dyslexia Duo.
Each week, we sit down with amazing people, including top researchers and experts in dyslexia, powerful advocates, affected individuals, and more.
Together, we break down the myths, share real stories, highlight research and strategies to advise our listeners about this prevalent learning disability. Come join us!
Melissa.
Hey, Amy.
We're so excited to get this next guest on here. Y'all got a little taste last year with Mary McFarland, but here we have the guru. So we will let the guru introduce himself and tell our audience who he is and what he does.
Right.
Well, my name's Pete Bowers. I'm delighted to be here. I was a teacher for 10 years, grades 3 to 6, and then ran into an instructional resource called Real Spelling in 2001, and it kind of turned my head upside down. In all that time I was teaching, I was in my 9th year, and I was always a terrible speller myself and a slow reader. I didn't really know I was slow until I was reading a magazine next to my wife, and she read 2 pages in the time I read half, and I didn't actually believe that any human could read that fast until we were talking. And she, okay. So I'm surely dyslexic myself, but I don't want to overemphasize that because I didn't have trauma around learning to read. As I say, I'm a slow reader still, but my spelling was ridiculous. And as a classroom teacher, it just seemed like I'd never seen spelling instruction work for anybody. It didn't work for me, and I wasn't sure how I was supposed to help kids do something I was unable to do. And I just didn't think spelling made any sense. And so I go to this workshop and I find out from a guy who had studied how English orthography works, and he explained it in a way that made sense of all sorts of spellings I could never remember. So that was my introduction to the fact that one of the reasons people struggle to learn how to read and write is because we're not actually teaching an accurate understanding of how the writing system works. And when I started to bring that to my grade 4 classroom, it just turned everything upside down. And after that, we came back to Kingston, Ontario, where I'm on Wolf Island right next to it right now. But I came back to Kingston and started doing grad work with John Kirby, and that introduced structured word inquiry. And so I got into the research, and we can talk about that. But just to give people the bigger frame, that my real focus is more teaching. And once you discover that you've been misunderstanding for most of your life, you want to make sure that you try to reduce that for other people.
Very nice.
Yeah. So do you feel like more of your structured word inquiry is geared more toward a spelling deficit or more toward the reading deficit, or is it kind of both?
I think Ariad has this great line about how spelling is 2 sides of, the same coin. Like reading and writing are 2 sides of the same orthography, right? The same coin. So the thing is, if someone is struggling to look at print and recognize the words, one way to help them get better at recognizing what's there is to help them produce what's there. So you take the thing apart and you show them how the pieces fit, and then the spelling is production. It's way harder than recognition. So it's always going to be the case. I don't know anybody who's a brilliant, accurate speller and struggles in reading, but lots of people who read no problem but are bad spellers, because
Right.
production is just more difficult. You have to have a more intensive lexical quality for spelling because you have to have all the pieces. Whereas recognition, if you get most of it, you can skip over bits you're not sure. I could read words I couldn't spell, no problem. But I could never remember how to spell them. But the thing that happens is that when you do that to someone who's always struggled to different levels of reading or spelling, the thing that was so transformational about this, well, I'll give you a story that I often tell. The first matrix I saw had the word really in it. And
Okay.
just a couple of weeks before I saw that thing in this 45-minute session, I was trying to write in a kid's homework book. And I'm trying to write, Johnny had a really good day, but I have to stop at the first L because I don't know if it was 1 or 2 L's.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I would have
Mhm.
no trouble reading really. But I'm not willing to misspell really in my grade 4 kids' homework book that the mom has to sign. So I have to look
Right.
at the dictionary.
Yeah.
And when you look in the dictionary, like every dyslexic you've ever met or bad speller for whatever reason, as soon as you see the spelling, I close the dictionary and think I'll have the same question tomorrow. Like it wasn't going to be this occasion in my 30s that I finally saw the word really in print enough that I can memorize it. Clearly, I do not have an orthographic memory that can hold on to spellings that is just non-effort for other people, right? And then someone tried to help me remember how to spell it when I made fun of myself for misspelling it. And she says, well, of course it's two L's, it's real Lee. To
Mhm.
which I say, how do I know to syllabify it really? How come it's not real E? And the thing is, I tell this story a lot because the person telling me that honestly thinks they're helping me. They
Yeah.
honestly think I'm a good speller because I was taught to syllabify. How could you have a grade 4 teacher who can't spell really? Why aren't they teaching how I was taught? I was taught this way and I'm a good speller. And what that is a mistake of is causation and correlation. She's assuming that she's an accurate speller because of how she was taught.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say she has a mind that has good orthographic memory. She was going to be a good speller no matter how she was taught.
Okay.
But she's assuming it's because of how she's taught. So she's trying to give it to me in an act of kindness that's, a little twist of, oh, come on, Pete, of course it's two L's, right? But the point being, she doesn't know, she doesn't even occur to her to wonder if it's real E. But how do you think she knows to syllabify there? What would be the way that someone would know confidently that it's real Lee, not real E? Any ideas?
Exposure is what I would think. Yeah, I would think like exposure to it.
But what is the syllabifying rule that she's following? She's following the rule syllabify between the same letters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't syllabify between two letters if the question is there one or two letters.
Right.
So
Right.
so
Right.
her orthographic memory is so solid
Yeah.
that she doesn't even know she's using it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So she links syllables and the spellings and fine. And so she just instantly says, of course it's real Lee because she's syllabifying between the two L's, but you got to look at the perspective of the dyslexic
Right.
who lacks exactly that. And so what I'm arguing is that instruction, now I was teaching in, international schools. I loved my job. I was a happy person. I was embarrassingly bad speller, but it wasn't in my way of my life in any serious way, the way reading obviously is, if that had been the issue. But imagine if I'm a kid in a class and the teacher talks to me like that. I would think the only logical thing is everybody else understands this, and it must be me that is not understanding it. But in fact, in reality, I'm being given an instruction that is not real. You can't know to syllabify real Lee versus real E unless you know the spelling in the first place. So I
Right.
think it actually is a harmful thing
Mm.
for that student because the signal is there's something for you to understand here. You just got to study it harder. But there's no amount of study that would ever solve this. So then you get the issue that is, I think, the biggest cognitive load for learning, which is shame with kids who are really
Yeah.
struggling. Right
Yeah.
now, so then I'm belaboring the story, but so that was the background when I get to this conference and the guy puts up the word real on the board, pure randomness, but it grabs my
Yeah.
attention when he draws a line. And I will tell your listeners, I recommend you have a pen and a paper because every once in a while I'll suggest you actually physically do the stuff because you got to see it and work with it to understand it well. But if you do that, if you write the word real like a real nice day and you draw a line after the L up and down, and then he just said, well, we could take this word real and then we could add like a prefix or a suffix. And he puts the ly after the line.
Right.
And the instant I saw the word real and a line and then an ly, I knew I'd never have to look in a dictionary again.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have to wonder is what was it about that presentation that could instantly fix a spelling question that I hadn't resolved in my 30s as a classroom teacher, and people had tried to help me with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they helped me with something that isn't actually helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
But what was it about this? Well, I did need to know how to spell the word real, which I did know how to spell, and I did have to know there's an ly suffix, which I did know. But I also know that I've no reason to think you drop L's when you add suffixes. I know that you can replace Y's with I's and double consonants and replace E's. I never
Mhm.
knew when you do any of those things, and I didn't know there was a reliable convention for it, but there is, but I didn't know. But no signal in my life had ever said drop an L. So there's two L's in really because there's one in the word that you're building on and there's one in the suffix. And
Right.
then I instantly know I'll never have to. And here's what I'm going to try to, I'll use this phrase today a lot. What I didn't have the language then, but what I'm going to argue is that what I was given with that matrix and the word sum that you build with it is a spelling meaning correspondence that
Mhm.
explained the problems I had with the grapheme phoning correspondences.
Mhm.
My problem was the grapheme phoning correspondence. I didn't know how many L's I need to write the old pronunciation and really.
Wow.
There's no way for me to know that. And there literally is not a means by which you can explain that from within phonology. There's nothing about pronunciation that can answer the question.
Right.
There's a word steely blue,
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
one L, because
One
that
out.
one has a Y adjective suffix. But really we use as an adverb and it has an ly. So what we keep doing to kids who have, and you're a Dyslexia Duo podcast, right? Just the common issue, the most people always talk about the phonological processing deficits that you often find with dyslexics, which absolutely true. It seems to me like there's all sorts of things that go into it, but it seems to me the biggest issue that dyslexics have is they have a terrible orthographic memory.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And right.
what's in working memory. But one of the things, in fact, I just had a course yesterday afternoon to some teachers, and we were talking about orthography and spelling. Whereas when you read, if you don't know the word, you can kind of figure it, especially if it's in context, you can figure it out in context. But when you spell, there is no context. And you have to have that good orthographical memory in
Yeah,
order to spell words. Like I can read the word hors d'oeuvre. I cannot
yeah,
spell the word hors
yeah.
d'oeuvre, you
And
know.
you know why you have trouble with hors d'oeuvre?
It's
Because
French, right?
French. So you are suddenly being hit with French orthographic conventions that you
Right.
don't have statistical learning for in all the English reading you've been doing. And when you
Mhm.
hit chef, people act like it breaks the, the floss rule, but no, French doesn't have a
Yeah.
floss rule, so we don't it's like,
Right,
right?
right,
It's not French is making a mistake to not spell like English, right? And
right,
Right.
so we got to understand that those aren't exceptions to English spelling because they're not English spellings.
Right.
But
right.
And the kids have to remember all of that. And I mean, I think about the kids who sit in front of me every day, and there's no way they can remember all of that every day.
and if you point out like what I just did with Amy, right? Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
Is that as soon as you said that, if you were my student and I can tell you, hey, it's not on you that you can't spell hors d'oeuvre. I don't expect you to spell French. The kid is relieved of the
Yeah.
shame of not understanding how to spell a French word. But that means the teacher needs to know there's these things called loan words, that we use words in English and they're a fascinating story. And there's a process of anglicization, if you want. I don't mean to take tangents, but my joke with cafe, right? There's cafe, like
Right,
that is so much not an English spelling.
right,
Right?
right,
But think about it. There's two ways you'll see cafe written in English at signs. Sometimes there's an accent over the E and
right.
sometimes there's not.
It's not.
You
Mhm.
know which one has more expensive coffee.
Yeah.
The one that keeps the accent is telling you we are really French. We make good
You're
coffee,
super
right?
French.
But the one who's dropped the accent is more of a coffee shop.
Oh, I
And we
need to
have,
go put the accent over my E now that I
there
think
you
about
go.
it.
But these are things that are patterns in the way that spellings works, that it's not important for the kid to know that specific story, but
Mhm.
it's valuable when they understand varieties of stories that is giving them the signal. And this is the most important thing, that the writing system that they are struggling to make sense of for reading and spelling and vocabulary and all of it is an ordered system that is understandable. It's complex. You're not going to learn it tomorrow.
Right.
But what, the argument that you will hear me say all the time is that nothing motivates like understanding. And so when that was what happened to me when I saw that, I haven't even got to the end of my really story, that when I see, instantly I'm like, holy cow, this guy just explained a spelling that I couldn't spell 2 weeks ago. And I will never forget now. That's weird. How is that possible? And then he puts up, toss out other, if your viewers at home or listeners at home have their real and the line next to it, think of a prefix or suffix you could add to real to make another word. Well, I could say, oh, it was an unreal. You see that buzzer beater bat? It was unreal. And so notice what's happening when you build this matrix with the class. Kids are being engaging in their oral language, putting words into sentences. They're getting syntactic practice. They're getting practice with words they might not be able to read. The oral conversation invites the dyslexics into conversations about vocabulary words that they wouldn't get exposure to if we were limiting their exposure to literacy to what they can currently read. The matrix allows you to, this is the kind of stuff that Tim Shanahan's talking about a lot right now, but I would argue that the matrix and the word sum and studying word families and etymological relatives is a way that you can have kids who can't yet read words at their intellectual level engage with words and their spellings and meanings and pronunciations at their intellectual level. And now you have a very different kind of attention than a grade 8 kid who's feeling embarrassed with his grade 3 book. But now think about what happens. So you can build Unreal and you can build Surreal. Oh, now I know why there's two L's. It's not, Dali is a surrealist. Oh, now I have an IST for surrealist. And you keep going. And then he added, after that word, REAL, he added an ITY suffix. What word did he just build for me? Melissa, I saw you smile. Why did you smile at adding an ITY?
Because I had to think about it for a second, first of all, but then I realized it was reality.
And you might have gone reality first and thought, really?
Yeah.
But see, this is a powerful message. The spelling doesn't tell you how to speak.
Right.
It's
but I had to use all of my
you had to think about it and then see the spelling and realize what makes it cool. And this was the thing that really busted my brain in that first session was, holy cow, I now know why I need the E and the A in reality.
Right.
Because the spelling of that part has to be able to represent the pronunciation real and realist and surreal, but it also has to be able to represent the pronunciation of reality. Now notice there's the fishing reel, which is REEL. So now I think this is what I'm talking about, the spelling meaning correspondences. It also means spelling meaning distinctions because I know which reel for a real nice day. There's nothing about the pronunciation of a real nice day that can tell you to choose the EA or the double E version. But if you think about a related word, you have a spelling meaning correspondence to that other word and its pronunciation. And so this, for someone like myself, just reaches out and says, holy cow, this stuff makes sense. That's crazy. Now, the other people in the room who don't have a history, they might go, oh, that's kind of cool that real and reality and surreal are all connected. I didn't think about it that way. And that could be kind of cool. But notice the thing that I want to highlight right at the beginning of this conversation is what people think about structured word inquiry often when they're new to it, they'll see a matrix, they'll see word sums, they'll call it morphological instruction. And that's just not what it is. It's not morphological instruction. It is instruction of the orthography system. It's just teaching how the writing system works. Now, if you are going to teach how the writing system works, there is zero option. You're going to have to teach about morphology. There's also zero option. You're going to have to teach about grapheme phoneme correspondences. And there is also zero option. You're going to have to teach how the morphology system and the phonology system work together. And if you do not, the evidence that you misrepresent the writing system is that's how we teach in most schools, and most schools have massive lists of irregular words kids have to memorize, and we are teaching kids in high, like most popular reading research, science of reading based resources, sorry, kid, you're going to have to memorize does and your and been. And just everybody think about the dyslexics you know and the pain and suffering you see with those irregular words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And every time you ask a spelling question, and my problem, like, really isn't thought of as an irregular word. Like, I can't explain, but I have troubles with words just wherever there's more than one way to possibly spell the pronunciation. I've got no means of choosing because my orthographic memory sucks. But once I was given the idea that I didn't get the language at the time, but I keep using this language that I think it's striking that we don't have any phrase for spelling meaning correspondence in schools. We have grapheme phonic correspondence, sound symbol correspondence, letter sound correspondence. A is for apple, Z is for zoo, the T sound. We have every kind of instructional language drawing what I always use this line from Marion Wolf that our attentional systems are biological spotlights. Wherever they're not turned on, nothing can happen.
Right.
Right. So you only can learn what you attend to. It doesn't matter how smart the instruction is. If it doesn't get the kid to attend to the thing you're teaching, they ain't going to learn. You can't
Right.
make connections of things you don't see or
Mm.
encounter or engage with. Right.
Right.
And so when there is zero signal in instruction to the links between spelling and meaning, and like, let's say it's 90% letter sound correspondence and 10% little signals of meaning. You don't have a habit of mind for looking for meaning. So when I looked at really and I couldn't tell it was one or two L's, and then somebody gives me a sound strategy to remember it, it doesn't solve it because there is no phonology strategy that could solve it. All I needed was like the tiniest signal to consider spelling meaning correspondence. And now this attentional spotlights thing, you know about statistical learning. You know what I mean when I talk about that?
No,
So,
I
what is
don't.
statistical learning?
so statistical learning is like the learning that's just going on all the time. Like humans are pattern seeking creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like the self-teaching hypothesis and stuff from Share, as you encounter structures in the world, you build recognition of those structures so that you can now recognize them, right? You build
Make
mental representation.
connections, right?
You make connections in your
Okay.
brain. And when people talk about a sight word, right? So Aries sight word, it's not that you teach. Sight word doesn't mean to teach to memorize. It means you want to teach such that the word is in your memory in well integrated and mental representations of the pronunciation, spelling, and meaning of the word.
Okay.
Those are mental representations. Those are bindings that happen in your head. And when those are sufficiently bound, you have automaticity for that word, which means if I'm reading a text and I see the letters STOP on the page, I do not have to think about the grapheme phoneme correspondences. I don't have to think about anything sublexical. I just get instantly the pronunciation and meaning of stop. And if I'm thinking stop, I don't pause and wonder how it's spelled, just STOP comes out of my hand because I have automated access to this well-bound thing. So the question is, how are we going to bind the spellings, pronunciations of meanings of words fast, effectively enough that kids can have access to the words without too much effort because they need that cognitive space to do reading comprehension, right? You don't want to, if you're thinking about the words, you can't think about how the sentence works, what the sentence means, right? So here is a definition of statistical learning from Romberg and Safran in 2010 that is, I think people would think is a common way of thinking of it. Human learners, including infants, are highly sensitive to structure in their environment. Statistical learning refers to the process of extracting this structure. So this is the idea your biological spotlights are always going around the world. You see things and you start connecting them to things. So now when you see similar things, you get the meaning faster, right?
Mhm.
I would make one change to this statement though, and that is that I would say, in fact, human learners, including infants, are highly sensitive to structure in their environment. Statistical learning refers to the process, and here's where I change it, extracting the structure they perceive.
Structured
So
they
the
perceive.
first
Okay.
statement is that we are pattern-seeking devices. We wouldn't survive if we weren't. We need to be able to see the world, see patterns in the world, put them so that we can, when we're hunters and gatherers, you got to be able to hear that twig and see that's danger. You've made a link between noise and danger. That's a statistical pattern that you've learned so you don't die.
Right.
Right? But we see all these patterns. Now, the thing that we have to remember is that we know full well there are things called illusions. You'll see them online all the time. You put two boxes and you do something to them that it looks like one's bigger than the other. But
Yeah, I know what you're
when you
talking
take
about.
a ruler, you realize, Jesus, they're
The
identical, but
same.
they look totally different. Well, what they're doing is they're taking statistical happenstances that make a darker thing seem farther back or a lighter, whatever it is. Normally that would be the case, but in this case, they manipulate it so that you draw on your statistical learning about stuff in the past, but you misapply it in this case. So you see something that's really not there. It's not that we are just extracting the structure that is in the world. We are extracting the structures that we perceive to be in the world.
Interesting.
And so a good example of that is the infamous TION suffix, which I'm going to argue does not exist. I've never seen evidence of a TION suffix being fixed to any word in a context where it doesn't destroy the morphology of the rest of the word. Right? So I often use a matrix on the ACT base for this. And I can pass on some links so like people who listen to this can see
Yes.
some videos with these examples because I recommend seeing it much better. But the
That'd be
point
good.
is this. If you go to the Oxford Dictionary, you can look up the TION and it says it's a noun forming suffix added to many words, and it gives the examples of completion and relation.
Mhm.
But there's no complete with a TION. There's no relay with a TION. It's complete with an
Mhm.
ION replacing the E. And it's relate with an ION replacing the E. That if you call it a TION suffix, you hinder access to the relate. Right?
Okay.
This has always been boggling my mind when I see these words, and I'm trying to help the kids
Right.
decode
And we're
them.
trying to, we do combining forms and things like that with our students. And I get that question a lot. They're like, well, how can it be TION there when there's
Yeah.
a TE? And I'm
Well,
like, I don't know, just roll with it.
but now here's the thing. So I'm going to use a big word
Okay.
that you don't need to worry about right now. But the funny thing is people get nervous about this word, but they know what it must mean in essence, which is there's David Sher had an article recently on the combinatorial nature of language. So when I say combinatorial, I want your listeners to think about it for a second. And you guys, what do you think the word combinatorial, if I say language is combinatorial, what is it trying to tell me?
It's like it combines and fights at the same time.
It is about the fact that all the pieces of language have to combine smoothly or you won't have a language.
All right.
So the TION does not combine around the system because it destroys the morphological structure of any. This isn't, we're doing science, so people are welcome to falsify what I'm saying here. But to falsify what I'm saying, you would have to give me two words where you add TION for the same function without destroying the known structure
Right.
of the word you're fixing it to. Now,
Right.
here's the reason why that's important. Think about right now, if anyone, listeners, and the two of you, have you ever actively taught your kids that when they ask a question, they're going on a quest for knowledge?
Not
No,
specifically. I
not
can't
no.
remember in recent history talks.
But isn't it obvious now?
Yeah.
But not if every time you read and write that word, you think question. You don't
Right.
hear quest in question. How do
Right.
you pronounce? So do me a favor, Melissa. This is
Mhm.
something that I do all the time, and it's something that is in some of the videos that I'll link for your audience. But I want you to notice something. Do me a favor, Melissa, and say the word act.
Act.
Okay, so use the word act in a phrase or sentence.
I act crazy when I eat sugar.
Perfect.
Oh,
So one thing that I just did, if you were my student, not only did I get you to show me that you understand the meaning of the word, I forced you to put it in a sentence, which means that you had to make a sentence that fit the syntax of act. You had to use it as a verb. Well, you didn't have to. You could have used it as a noun too.
I realized I should have said I act crazily.
Yeah, that's all right. But here's the other thing then. Now say actor.
Actor.
So how do you spell actor?
ACTOR.
And what I would do, and your audience might even hear, is I tap out the graphemes and double graphemes in the base. So I would go ACTOR. So I'm using the spelling out to signal where the base is and that the OR is a separate thing.
Okay.
Somebody who acts, right? Oh, an actor is somebody who acts. Oh, now I added an S and a S. So that was ACTS and a big pause there where the plus sign would be. Now, how about if I say acting, how do you pronounce the ACT, Melissa, in the word acting?
How do I pronounce the ACT? In acting?
Yeah.
You say act.
Yeah, you do. Well, here's another way of asking that question that might have helped. Say acting for me.
Acting.
Say acting without the ing.
Act.
Do you feel your tongue touch the top of your mouth? Say acting.
Acting.
When you felt your tongue touch there, right?
Yes, I did.
So the base ACT is pronounced act in acting. It's pronounced act in actor. Now, if I add an ION to the ACT, what word have I built?
Action.
Can you use action in the phrase for me?
I am not speedy in action when it's time to get up in the morning.
There you go. Very good. And you can talk about an action movie or whatever. Now, how do you pronounce the ACT when you say action?
Action.
Yeah, that TI becomes a sh. Action.
But guess what? Oh, this is perfect. Why can I? And this is where I recommend you guys should do this with a pen right now.
Okay.
And your audience should take a pen right now. Now, I want you to write out loud the base ACT. So name the letters as you write them.
ACT.
Now put a plus sign.
Plus.
And put your ING.
ING.
And now you put a little arrow and you write the result ACT and then you pause and you write ING.
ING.
And what's that word?
Acting.
Okay. And what phoneme is the T grapheme writing?
What phoneme does it represent? The T sound.
The T, right? When I say acting, I say that I feel my tongue touch the top.
The top.
Now,
right.
Yep. Now, so there's no TI digraph there. It's just a T graph.
Right.
So now put ACT, write out loud again.
ACT.
Plus. ION. And then is rewritten as is what I say when I do the
arrow. Okay, is rewritten as.
Is rewritten as. Now write the result, pausing at the plus sign.
ACT. ION.
Beautiful. And I like how you're saying the ION quickly. I don't think I even said it, but you picked up on it. That we're going to always announce the affixes quickly. Now, you mentioned, Amy, that the TI is writing sh.
Action. Yeah.
There cannot be a TI digraph in that word.
Right. Because
you can't have a digraph with a plus sign between it and a word sum.
Right.
You cannot have a grapheme that is partially in one morpheme and partially in another.
Right.
It never happens. And that is about combinatorialness of the language.
I still think of it fighting each other a little bit.
But you do. But here's the thing. Do me another favor. This is helpful. Like, it's really useful to do these deep dives in little words. Write the word package out loud for me. Make a word sum for package.
K-A-G-E.
Now notice I would try to write it out P-A-C-K.
Right, C-K.
Plus
one.
And then AGE, because the AGE is a suffix. So this is a part of something that I call spelling out orthography. I'll make sure you have links to it. I think it's probably like I can't do anything in my instruction without using spelling out orthography. Like it's embedded in every time I spell a word, every matrix, every word sum. It is like endemic because it's where we are building up the constant practice of dragging our biological spotlights through the actual structures of the writing system so that we can then drive our statistical learning to be built on the actual structures, not the illusions of structures that we are being told to see. Because if you are seeing TION all the time, you can build a TION thing you think of it as a suffix in your head. And if you do that, you will not notice the quest in question.
Okay, I have a
Yeah.
question, Dr. Bowers.
It's a quest for a question now.
But before we go there, we have to finish the challenge.
Okay.
If there's not a TI digraph in action,
Right.
how are you pronouncing the ACT base when you say action?
I'm
That's
just
my
doing
question. I don't know.
I'll tell you, you are saying act.
Right. Oh, sh
And how
is
do
in
you,
there.
how do you,
Act.
how,
Okay.
the sh is in the base.
I wouldn't
It
have thought
is?
that. I wouldn't have thought that.
Of course you wouldn't, because what I am doing to you, I mean, this is a perfect illustration. This is my argument that the matrix and the word sum give teachers what I call combinatorial guardrails for their instruction. And the funny thing is, it means they don't need to know the word combinatorial.
Okay.
Because the plus signs in the word sum and the lines in the matrix tell you where the morphemes are. And once you know where the morphemes are, you know where the graphemes can't be. There cannot be a TI because clearly the base is an ACT for acting, an ACT for actor, an AC for action. That's insane.
Right.
Act doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning associated with the pronunciation act.
Right.
There's no meaning connected to the AC. There's no AC base. There is an AC prefix. It has nothing to do with this.
I get that
The
part.
base
Yeah,
is ACT.
that's what I was thinking. There's
here,
an AC prefix somewhere. I remember seeing that.
yeah,
somewhere.
but that isn't in the word act. Now, the thing that is so helpful, the way that I'm doing this with you, is that it's highlighting in a way that we can talk about a bit more, that in schools, we are always and importantly drawing connections between the smallest spelling units, orthographic units in our writing system, which are graphemes.
Right.
And the smallest spoken units of speech in English are the phonemes.
Right.
Letters are not English. They're Roman alphabet letters. When you say letter, it could be Italian, it could be French, it could be German.
That's right.
Like
That's
right? It's not an English thing. It's a Roman alphabet that Roman alphabet languages have taken those very useful symbols, and then we turn them into English structure. And those English structures are comprised of single letters, 2 letters, or 3 letters. And those are now graphemes. So the T letter is a letter we use. You can look at the word action and you can say that's a letter T.
Right.
But if you're talking about what is it representing, you have to say that's a grapheme T that's writing T in actor and acting, its default job. But what is hard to talk about without the diagrams, and I'll show you in the videos, is that we can learn that the T grapheme can write sh if there's an I or U after it. Now, I gave you a word sum for package.
Got it. Okay.
Why is there an E at the end of package?
Is it the layer of language it comes from?
Well, take the E away, and how would you have to pronounce it? You couldn't say G, because the G can't write G. I mean, it's not, it would write G if there's not an EI or Y after it.
Right.
So that package, that E isn't there to teach you about the pronunciation of the A. It's not package.
Yeah.
It's not for the pronunciation of the vowel. It's there for the pronunciation of the consonant. That is exactly what we see with the T. The T grapheme, its default job is to write t, like in take and act and tell and stuff. But if there's an I or U after it, it can write sh, and it can write ch, like in actual.
Okay.
In actual, I have a ch. Now, I need to do one more thing. I know that I go scattered.
That's
but
okay.
and then
It's
you
all right.
guys
We're
can phone
good.
me back. So the thing that I want to show you that we just walked through is I was getting you to pay attention to the grapheme phonic correspondence with the T in actor and acting.
Right.
And I was getting you to notice the shift of what the T does in action to write sh. And the only reason I could do that is because I could falsify the hypothesis that is taught all over the place of a TI digraph. The word sum and the matrix gives you the capacity of falsification. Because it allows us to falsify the illusion of a TI digraph that is in our head, right? And now we have to say, well, if it's not a TI because there's a plus sign in there, because they're not, then what's writing this? And then we get introduced to a grapheme phoneme correspondence that I never see taught where there aren't matrices and word sums, and that is the T can write sh and ch if there's an RU after it. So we have to ask ourselves, when the main push of all the science of reading is that we got to give the best possible grapheme phoneme correspondence instruction, how is it that this one, which is all over the place, is not taught at all?
Right.
And the reason is because it is a grapheme phoneme correspondence that's only understandable when you understand the morphology, because I've never seen an example of the T writing sh or ch unless there's a morpheme following it in the word sum. So when you don't have a word sum, it looks like a TI suffix, it looks like a TION. And so you just treat it that way and you go action without noticing
Right.
that you just pronounced a nothing ack and a nothing shun. There isn't a shun meaning unit. You can talk about it as a syllable, but syllables don't carry meaning, and they violate the meaning. And so what I'm saying is you can help a kid in the moment. And this is, I understand this entirely. But wait a second, I'm working with kids all the time and they get to the word action and they miscue it like action or something. And then I just say, remember when you see a TION, how's that usually pronounced? And the kid gets to the word action. Well, how could that be a bad thing? He wasn't getting the word. I signaled the syllable and he got the word.
Right.
But the point is we need to be aware of immediate learning and long-term learning.
Right. Okay.
So absolutely in the moment, you gave the kid access to that word. But that kid is growing up in a world in which their teachers have never noticed the link between quest and question.
Right.
And a million other connections that we don't even know are there because our biological spotlights have never been drawn to the idea of spelling meaning correspondences, so we don't even look for them. Non-dyslexics, they're picking up on these things without having to be taught it. They can't explain it, but they didn't need to be explained to be productive in reading and writing. But we dyslexics clearly are not succeeding very well. We're not giving us access to what is fundamental to the writing system. So here's, and I'll stop after this and let you redirect me. But here I think is the biggest, one of the biggest forks in the road. When we talk about in schools, there's people who talk about teaching speech to print and others who prefer print to speech. I think both.
Right.
But in every case where you're talking about speech to print or print to speech, what is speech about? What are you linking when you say speech? You're linking the print to what aspect of
The
speech?
sound.
The sound.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We are treating speech as if it is a synonym for pronunciation. There has never been anything that we can call speech that isn't pronunciation of meaning. Pronunciation is a delivery device of meaning. Sign language doesn't use pronunciation, it uses motor movement. Motor movement is the delivery device of meaning in sign language. You don't have pronunciation at all. It's not speech, right? But speech, we act like its essence is sound. But no, sound is the essence of how we convey the meaning, and the writing system represents both. And we have seen many examples of the way the spelling system represents pronunciation and speech. We were teaching the grapheme phoneme correspondences. That is where we have the systematic and they're combinatorial. The way I can prove to you that the T can write those different phonemes is because it does them in combination around the system. We gave you action, I gave you question, I gave you actual. We can do it all. Once it can do it around the system, it's a thing. And then we see above that, we have written morphemes and they link directly to spoken morphemes.
Yep.
And so what I took you guys through in what was the hard part was having you link this written morpheme to the spoken morpheme.
Yes.
And because of the previous misguidance, you are thinking about ack and shun, and it's all confusing. But once I have the word sum and the matrix, I can show you, no, that T is in the base.
Yeah.
So the base can't be pronounced ack. The only grapheme available to write that, it can't be the I. We proved it's not the TI. So we get to falsification. The point of falsification is it gives you an ability to look for another understanding. But when you don't have falsification, we can treat TION as a suffix and TI as a digraph forever because there's no means to falsify it.
Okay.
But that is giving us a world where we are not having a constant syncing of the links between spelling and meaning. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. So
Holy
I have
cows.
a million questions.
I do too.
know. I will try to be shorter.
It's
You're
good.
good.
I guess my question to you is about one, then how would ION be pronounced without that T?
Beautiful, beautiful. See, Melissa, this is what happens when you structure the conversation around the actual combinal structure of the language. So if, say action,
Action.
now say action without the action.
Mm.
There you go, done. This is what we ask kids to do all the time with graphemes and phonemes. We do it all the time. But why would we not draw attention to, and the thing that's so important is with this combinatorial model, and again, I will show a video that will make this much easier to understand, but a central piece of it that knocked me out when I read Cher's article is that everything he was talking about there, like literally the combinatorial model in this video I made with Marie, we made before I saw Cher's article because I built it based on the matrix and the word sum. And when I talked to Marie, I said, I want to show that letters nest into graphemes. They're not the same thing. And that graphemes nest into morphemes and that morphemes go into words. And I didn't know that that is a necessary feature of all language, the way that those pieces work and how they link to the spoken side, where you have phonemes linking in, but nesting into spoken morphemes, nested into words. And so now what I'm saying is what we do to kids all the time. Hey, how do you pronounce, say cat without the k?
Yeah.
Say, right? I just did it with you and said, say action without,
that was
without
a dumb question. It was a dumb question.
Well, it wasn't a dumb question, but now you have a new question. Now, and here's the other thing that this reveals. Now this is going to break some brains, but that's okay.
It's already broken. Right?
What is the grapheme I in the ION suffix representing?
That's what I'm wondering. Mm-hmm.
I know it is. And the thing is, it's not representing any pronunciation.
It's silent.
The way I'm going to say it, it is, you can say silent, yeah. It's not representing any pronunciation. Now, however, think about it. When I say, I have to go another word. If I say Prince of Wales, what am I talking about?
A royal family member?
Unless I said, I went to the aquarium and they had these amazing Prince of Wales. The photographs are beautiful. Right? There's no way, and notice Prince doesn't have a T in it. The Prince of Wales doesn't. But you don't pronounce the T when you say photographic prince. Mm-hmm. Now, the T is still there. We don't drop the T because we don't pronounce it when we say footprints in the snow. We keep it there because it's a spelling meaning correspondence. There's a fancy term for it. It's representing a zeroed allophone when you don't pronounce it. It doesn't matter. The point is it's not pronounced, but we don't drop it because it's not pronounced, because it's the spelling meaning correspondence trumps the spelling pronunciation. And the reason I say that is in the most common pronunciation of the ION suffix, that I is zeroed. We don't pronounce it. It's the O writing the and the N writing the N. But if you are a champ and you add an ION, you got champion. Mm-hmm. Now it's pronounced. Yeah. And when you say union, it's UNE plus an ION, and the I is writing the Y of union. So you have to look around the family of the morphemes to be able to understand why the I is there. But what was beautiful is you had what I would say is a statistical learning of a TION suffix and a TI digraph that was what I'm going to say an illusion built in your head from instruction and experience, statistical learning. And then when I give you this combinatorial guardrail, it helps you like rejig think about the ACT and the pronunciation that, and then you are a learner because you realized I hadn't explained what's going on with the I, and the assumption that everybody has is that it's weird that there's a grapheme there not writing a pronunciation.
Right.
But that's not weird. It's all over the place. We even have a name for it in schools. A single silent D is a grapheme that's called silent.
Yeah.
It's still a grapheme,
Yeah. And I know
right?
this stuff. Like, that's
Yeah,
like so
yeah,
weird. You take it out of its
it's
context and it's
Right.
weird.
the word is schema that I think you're looking for. We built a schema that every child grows up with and every teacher has almost, and that is that spelling is a system for representing pronunciation that's unreliable and just a lot of words you got to memorize.
Mhm.
That is the general schema. And when you see a word you're not sure how to spell, the only thing you do is you look for a sound letter correspondence link. And if it doesn't make any sense, well, then it's irregular and you just got to memorize that one. Sorry, kid. Well, that is unscientific
Right.
because these words that are being called irregular, like does and been and your, I can explain the grapheme phoneme correspondences, and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do in a system where the writing system evolves to represent the interrelationship of pronunciation and meaning. But when we treat it like it's right representing pronunciation, what we are calling exceptions is actually falsification of the idea that speech is pronunciation and the job of spelling is to write pronunciation. And then you can shift, and now it opens up. I see you guys like, oh,
Yeah.
I can now see
Right.
it, right?
Right.
And imagine that for the dyslexic who's got real struggles,
Right.
right? It's a whole different story. I said I would.
No, you're good. You're
stop
good.
for a
You're
minute.
good. So I have a couple of questions, and we may have to go back in the Wayback Machine to answer them. So
Yep.
at what point, age, grade, would you start to explain some, maybe these simpler matrices, that you use with kiddos? I understand morphology you said was different. And I know that you can talk about affixes and the meaningful affixes, and that's kind of a stepping stone to it. But you're going kind of far with this. At what point would we start to dive deep with our kids?
The way I would frame it is this. My argument is that we should do our best to teach such that we are always building an accurate general schema for how the writing system works. That we try to never teach something we have to later unteach.
Right.
I just had to work really hard with you guys to unteach stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Unlearning is
Right.
harder than learning.
Right.
You got to unlearn before you can learn, right?
Right.
And so let's just not create the situation where when the kid gets to grade 3, all of a sudden you say, well, I know we told you does is irregular, but here's how it actually works. So instead, we just can talk about this from the start as the idea that we need the biological spotlights to be drawn attention to the fact that the writing system is this amazing system that represents the pronunciations and meanings of the words that you know how to talk about.
Mhm.
And I can say on the first day, I can say, we are going to learn to read this year. This is very exciting. You might have an older brother or sister wouldn't it be great if you could just read your own book? Nobody doesn't want to learn how to read, right? You know what books look like, you know what words look like, and they've got all these letters in them. Well, we're going to learn how they work together to represent the words that you know when you talk. Now, here's something to keep in mind. Anybody who's talking English already has as much oral morphology in their head as they do phonology.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to show a diagram to you that I will describe, and I can make it available. The point that I want to articulate, and you can take a screenshot of that for sure. The point being, when we think about this triangle model,
Yes.
and if you remember the triangle model, you have the link between the semantics is at the top of the triangle, and then you have orthography at the left and phonology at the right. And this is the idea that we need to link the spellings, pronunciations, and meanings of words. This is all in your mind. You're binding the pronunciation, spellings, and meanings of words as a kindergartner when you're in preschool or coming to school, but they don't have the orthography yet. And what I'm arguing is that there's morphology is in the middle of this triangle because morphology is the only part of language that has pronunciations and meanings.
I see.
Okay. You can't have syllables there because syllables don't link to the meanings.
Right.
You can't have onsets and rhymes. You can't have phonemes because they aren't representers of lexical meaning, like the meanings and syntax of words, but morphology is. So what I've circled here is the meaning, phonology, and the morphology in the middle. That is what I would say is speech.
Okay.
It's by encountering speech that you build connections for the meanings and phonology and how the morphology works. And what I mean by that when we're talking about young kids is that if I say to a kid when they come to preschool on the first day, did you drive to school or were you driven?
Yeah.
They know what I
Yeah.
mean. Now, they're laughing because, of course, they didn't drive. They're a preschooler. But they had zero problem understanding that the driv of driven is the same meaning as the drive of drive. They have built their speech. I'm thinking of speech as kind of the thing that you engage with that's out in the world
Yeah.
that builds mental representations of oral language in your head. And what I'm saying is, what we treat that like in schools as if it's just the pronunciation part. No, you have as much morphology as you do phonology, or you wouldn't be talking. And what I'm suggesting is from the very beginning, we can draw attention to the shifting pronunciations of these meaning units and words with young kids before we even talk about the print. And we can then link it to the print. And so when we talk about, I could say every word you'll ever meet, and I use my fist for a base. So every word's a base or a base with something fixed to it. And I use two fingers in front or after for a prefix or a suffix. So we can say, do you like to play football? Oh, or you were playing foursquare outside. So I can go play and then with my fist, two fingers to show that I'm saying ing, playing. Oh, I can add ing to other things. Jumping, running, playing. Oh. And now I can talk about a base and a suffix,
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yeah, I love that.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Amy.
So let's talk about who we met at IDA, Tumbleweed.
Oh, I love Tumbleweed's decodable books, and they're for striving readers in grades 2 through 6. My favorite thing about them, in addition to the storylines, is the inclusion of comprehension, spelling, and vocabulary activities.
Yes, and there's no guessing because they took out the visual distractions. They still have illustrations, but not right next to the print.
And Tumbleweed is easy to implement with any core or intervention program. Their teacher guides are jam-packed with multimodal approaches.
Check them out at tumbleweedpublishing.com. Hi, this is Amy Rodenroth, and as part of the Dyslexia Duo podcast team and owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services, I want to talk to you about my business. Our COUT-trained team offers expert virtual or in-person therapy located in Prosper, Texas, using proven dyslexia curricula like Take Flight, Build, MTA, Alphabetic Phonics, and Reading by Design. We also provide crucial independent evaluations and advocacy services. Don't wait. Empower your child today. Visit www.discovereed.com to learn more. That again is www.discovereed.com. Discovereed, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show.
Have you ever seen like when they have the amazing goal in the Olympics, the last minute? Oh, they show the replay. They play it again. So we're bringing explicit attention to the meaningful units of speech that link related words. And then when we get to the writing of them, we can show them things like, oh, when I say my friend has 10 cats who hangs out at his house, but my other friend has 2 dogs, I draw attention to this and the z difference.
Mm-hmm.
But why did I put that? Oh, because it's more than one. Well,
Right.
why do I use S in both? And I have a video I can show you of introducing a matrix and word sum to a kindergarten class in Beijing,
Ow. Okay.
where we do that. And I took a book that they were reading about chicks and laying eggs. So I took the word chicks and eggs because I got to show the S suffix changing. And when I ask, why do I use the S when it says Z in eggs? The kid says, S says more.
Right.
So that is a class where the kid is beginning their journey with their biological spotlights being pointed to spelling meaning correspondences explaining grapheme phoneme correspondences. And when you talk about a word like twice and twin and two, to explain the W and two and how it's different from the other twos,
Right.
that's an etymological spelling meaning correspondence, right? And so the question is, why would we reduce any information that is going to help bind the spelling, pronunciation, and meanings of words?
Mm-hmm.
Don't overdo it so the kids don't know what's going on. But I don't have to explain every word. If a word comes up that has content that is, oh, we're going to have to come back to that one, I can say, ooh, this is a cool word. I don't know, maybe we haven't done suffixing changes yet or whatever it is. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. And even if I don't have the answer in my head right away, I can simply say, that's a great question. I don't even know the answer yet, but I'm sure there is one and I'm going to have to go look for it. Now, whether or not I even find the answer, there's a very different response from the kid who often is getting answers from you that explain it. This time, Mr. B can't explain it, but he's not telling me that because he can't explain it, that it's irregular. And then if I come back a week or two later and say, hey, remember John had that question? I was talking to my friends. Here's how it works. They're more excited to learn it because you didn't understand it in the first place.
Right.
But if every time you don't have an answer, you say, well, that means you got to memorize it, you stop asking questions, because why would you ask a question when the answer never helps?
Right.
Wow.
Right? So there's all sorts of examples of activities where you can talk about how words are connected. I do a what's in the family game all the time.
Oh.
Where you take a word, say you take play,
Uh-huh.
and you have read a book that has words like playful and playing or something in it. So you've already exposed the kids to these words. Now they know those words in their oral language, but you've run into them in print a little bit. So could you do me a favor, Amy, and spell this word play out loud?
Play, P
Yeah.
L-A-Y.
So I want you to have another go. And remember the tapping thing.
Yeah, I
What
was
I'm
trying to
saying
do it.
is, yeah, I saw, but I want you to listen to the instruction, which is you're going to give one tap for every grapheme or doubled grapheme in the base. And so play is a base.
Mhm.
So one tap for every grapheme in that base.
Oh, for the graphemes? Oh, P-L-A-Y, right? Because this
Exactly.
A-Y is a graph.
Exactly. And so notice what I get to do to kindergartners who may not know the names of these letters. Some of the class doesn't know the names of letters. Some of them are reading. You got huge variety. But for all of them, I would spell, oh, this is the word play. We know, like, you were playing outside. We talked about the other day, you have a base, the word play, and you can add ing, playing, running. We did all that. So that's our base. And I get the kids to spell, I'll spell it out first. P-L-A-Y. Everybody do it with me. P-L-A-Y. And I get them to do it with me. And I might tap and they spell.
L-A-Y.
And I'm giving the same amount of time to each grapheme. And by the end of doing it, they have announced P-L-A-Y multiple times. Right?
Right, right.
Now I say, well, say the word play for me, Amy.
Play.
What do you feel at the beginning? How do you think you write that p in play as I have the word on the board and they say the P? And
Yeah.
if they don't know the name of the letter P, they point at the P and say, oh, good, that's a P. All right. Now say play for me, Amy.
Play.
Can you say it without the P?
Lay.
Okay. What do you feel at the beginning of saying lay?
Oh.
What's writing the ul in play and lay?
L.
Okay. Say play.
Play.
What do you feel at the end?
A.
How do you think you write the A that you hear in play?
Well, if we've done it multiple times, hopefully they picked up on
Exactly.
A-Y.
And so, but see, this is the thing that you do with kids is then people don't understand, and I can't overemphasize this enough. This spelling out of orthography, there's multiple aspects of it. There's tapping out, there's writing out, there's spelling out, but all of them are means of dragging your biological spotlights through the two kinds of orthographic structures, the graphemes and the morphemes,
Mhm.
and how they link to the pronunciations, the phonemes, and the pronunciations of the morphemes.
I love this. I love this. And, it would be great if we saw classroom teachers doing that and then the base and the.
And I'll give you some links of people doing this.
Oh,
and
okay.
it'll blow your mind. But the thing that I want to highlight is people don't understand when I teach kids, when I'm doing the tapping out, I'm giving you the graphemes
Mm-hmm.
to scaffold the ability of the kids to link it to the phonemes.
Mm-hmm.
And they have zero problem saying AY when I get there,
Yeah.
because I've made them say AY many times, tapping it as a unit, and they don't have to know there's something called a digraph yet, but I've just led them to saying AY. So the point being, I'm happy. In fact, it would be my preference if the first word I deal with a kid in instruction includes at least one digraph or trigraph, because I, from the
Wow.
beginning, do not want them to think in letters. I want them to think in graphemes.
Graphemes. Okay.
So if I spell the word THE,
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be surprised when kids read it as taha. But if I spell it THE every time, I'm setting in motion the biological spotlights to notice THs,
Okay.
because I'm calling it a TH. When they practice in their script, I don't practice individual letters, like just to get the form of the letter and then instantly into graphemes and morphemes. THs, you're going to write THs hundreds of times. Teach the writing such that that is a unit, right? So I forget where I was going with all that, but what the point being, that spelling out and the writing out is a way to you to, oh, this is the early stuff. So I'm going to go back to my play game. So I took all these tangents, but in the class, I would have taken very quickly to get to the spelling and pronunciation of the base. So now we have play, PLAY, and then I have words around it that I've picked, some of which have the base and some of which have foils. And the foils will have a similarity in meaning, but not the same base,
Right.
or a similarity in spelling and pronunciation, but not the same meaning. So I can have real ones like playful, playfully, replay, plays, but I can have plain, like a plain paper bag.
Right. Oh,
And I can have lay because it's got the same letters.
right.
But the game is, or we're doing this in oral language or sitting around the table or something or on the board, and say which of these words are connected to our word play, the base PLAY, in structure and meaning. So now you take playful and you have a conversation. Well, he was very playful with the kittens out at recess. He was playing with, yeah, playful, that's connected to meaning. So PLAY. And so what would we have to add? I've given you the spelling of playful. Oh, you have to add the FUL. Well, can we add that to something playful, wonderful? Oh, we got those FULs all over the place. So now I've just given the kid another suffix. We've playful fits. But I hit plain, like a plain paper bag. Wait a second, I hear play in it, like I hear in playful, but it doesn't have PLAY. You can't make the word sum. It's not in the family. And lay, oh, wait, wait a second, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe LAY is the base of play. So I make a word sum taking the P off, but wait a second, there's no P prefix. And what does lay have to do with playing anyways? So each part of this game is using this guided, structured inquiry to increase the kid's focus on the spellings, pronunciations, and meanings of these words, which is a way to build those as sight words, even for the words that are rejected. Proving that plain paper bag isn't in the group still gets you exposure to the word plain, and you might go to the airplane that has a different spelling.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right. And you don't have to memorize them, but you want to know that, hey, if they're different words, I should expect them to be spelled differently because that's how the world is.
Right.
Well, and then
Right.
even with the word airplane or plane, that still follows a rule, a spelling rule.
Absolutely.
So you could teach them.
Not only does it follow a spelling rule, and so does the plain paper bag, but isn't it a wonderful thing that we have more than one way to spell the sounds? Otherwise, we couldn't distinguish which plane we mean.
Right, right.
But the way kids are taught, homophones are an example of spelling being crazy.
Absolutely.
Right. And I hate hearing that.
And now think about that. That's because we treat speech like pronunciation. The reason that we treat homophones as frustrating is because we think that they're just writing pronunciation. And if they were just writing pronunciation, they should be spelled the same. But the evidence is the opposite. The evidence is that overwhelmingly, when words happen to be pronounced the same, they are spelled differently because meaning is inherent in the way the system evolved. So the different words, not only do they typically just get spelled differently, where possible, they distinguish each other, right? So AI is a way of writing A in the plain paper bag, and the A with the N and the E is a way of writing that A phoneme in another one. Good thing we have more than one way to spell it.
Yeah.
right?
So I have kind of a meandering off now. So as far as the classroom teachers and the way that spelling is taught, they do a lot of homophone spelling on
Yeah.
their spelling lists, or they teach all the different ways you could spell A. And my students have always had a very hard time with this because they have not learned all of those methodologies for how to distinguish them.
Well, think about why.
Right.
When we draw attention to links between graphemes and phonemes, we're trying to draw attention between two definitionally abstract things.
Hmm.
And we aren't leveraging meaning, right? So when you only give links between pronunciation and spelling, you can think about the term triangulation. If I want to pinpoint a place on the map, if I only have two reference points, I don't know where that point is. I can say it's somewhere on this line, but I can't say where the city is because I've only been given 2 points.
Mhm.
You need a third point for triangulation.
Hmm.
Well, if you just tell me what are the possible grapheme phoneme correspondences, how the heck am I supposed to know which one to use where?
Right.
Now, non-dyslexics are really good at just remembering without knowing why. I think they're picking up on subtle meaning cues without knowing it. But whatever the reason is, they don't need to be pointed to this, right? And so, as an illustration of how bad my spelling was, as in my 9th year as a teacher, I used to misspell maybe all the time.
How would you spell it?
Yeah, that was my question.
Tell me what you think a misspelling of maybe
I
would
think you
be.
spelled it Mabey.
That would be one of the possible ones, but the most common one is Maby, because I would think, well, why don't you spell it like baby? They sound the same.
Okay.
Oh,
So, but see, here's the thing to think about that. You guys, if you don't have a history of a spelling issue, you would not ever go to the word baby as a guide to spell
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
because you already have the spellings in your head. So you don't go there.
And my students reverse the letters sometimes, the placement of the
Yeah.
letters.
Yeah, and you can't even imagine my mistake of how could you misspell maybe? Well, because I'm doing what I'm taught. I'm going to letter sound correspondences, but my brain demonstrated very clearly that two reference points is not enough for my orthographic memory to function.
Hmm.
And then, literally within a week or two of that first matrix, I did not see a matrix. There's two stories I often tell. The question one was like literally a week after that conference. I never saw a matrix on question. I never saw a word sum on question. I have in my classroom, I always had a question wall of fame. Cool questions kids would ask. And so I look up and I see the word question. And for the first time in my life, I see the quest.
yeah.
Oh,
Because I didn't need someone to analyze question for me. I needed them to analyze really and a bunch of other words. And then I could take that idea of looking at spelling, meaning, structure and see quest for the first time.
So that's what we're trying to lead the kids to automatically do that with all the words, not just the ones we're
Yes.
explicitly guiding them through. I see.
Now see that, and then one day, soon after that, I read the word maybe. I never had trouble reading maybe.
mhm.
But what do you think I noticed when now that I have spelling meaning what did I notice when I saw the word maybe when I was in my 30s after
That
my
it's
first
May
matrix?
and B.
It may be that it will rain later. Maybe it will rain. Oh my God, it's a compound. And since the word may is a sight word for me and the word be is a sight word for me, like I have automated, have concretized the wrong spelling since I was a kid. The funny reason this came back to me is that maybe a month or two ago, I wrote my old maybe. And in the moment, I instantly see it. And there would have been no way to self correct faster. And it was the self correcting that made, holy cow, I made my old mistake, but there was not an instantaneous question of what the real answer was. It was so clearly my automated old thing.
Mhm.
But because I understand it, I never have to look at it. I might make the spelling error, but I'll never have to look in a dictionary because I know it. Because once you understand a spelling, you don't have to memorize it.
Right.
You memorize things you don't understand. But once you understand the spelling of a word, you're not going to forget.
So when you're
Love it.
teaching students, how often do you have to go into the word origin? Is it constantly like, this is Anglo-Saxon, this is Latin, this is Greek?
I only would do it when it is a salient clue that is going to be helpful for the kid.
Okay.
It's not in and of itself. The point is, what we're doing is we're looking at a word. If I'm trying to get a kid to read a word, I want to have access to all the possible ways to explain the spelling, meaning, and
Okay.
pronunciation of that word. Now, if the word has something that I don't know why that's there, I get to choose, is it a good time to have a quick go at us working this out together as a class or a one-on-one where I don't honestly know the answer? Well, let's make a word sum and see what it would be. And if I find within 2 minutes that I'm not getting an answer and the kids are getting restless, well, that looks like a good question for the Wonderwall. Let's put that over there. And I'm going to come back to it. So I can now work at it when I don't have the responsibility of keeping the kids from exploding. And when I come back, the kids are so much more interested in the spelling precisely because they know the teacher didn't know the
That
answer
makes
in the
sense.
first.
Yep.
So there's no negative here. And this idea of how complex it is, the analogy I make is this. The thing about, literacy is that you can run into words that would require what I think of as the equivalent of calculus level math to explain this spelling, right?
Right.
Now, I'm not going to introduce calculus in grade 1.
Right.
But the fact that I don't do calculus in grade 1 doesn't mean that I don't introduce adding and multiplying and subtracting, right? Which are going to be needed when you get there later, right?
Right.
So the thing that you have to realize is, so when I'm in workshops, a common question I say is I ask a group, raise your hand if you are good at doing calculus. And, 5 people raise their hand out of 50. And then I say, raise your hand if you think that calculus is a system that works. And everybody raised their hand. And so we say, so not knowing how to do calculus is not evidence that it doesn't work.
Right.
Not being able to understand the spelling of yacht in this moment is not evidence that English spelling doesn't work. It's evidence that there's something about this spelling that you don't yet understand. And either I'm going to find it quickly or I won't. So if I don't find it quickly, and as a teacher, you know what you are aiming to teach for this lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, often the best thing that happens is that someone asks a better question than you planned, and you can take a tangent then and say, okay, I'm going to teach this now because they're ready for this.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't happen. I just teach what I planned. But if a question comes up that I don't know the answer to, I'm under no obligation to go down a rabbit hole that everybody's confused by. But I also am under no obligation to then say, well, that word must be irregular. All I got to do is say, and here's what I ask teachers to do before they feel comfortable. When a kid asks you a spelling question to which you do not know the answer, I encourage you to train yourself even before it feels normal to say, awesome, I have no idea. Let's check it out. Because it is exactly the words that you can't explain immediately that have something to teach you.
Right.
Should we do one for your audience? Like, is there one that
Sure.
is there a word that typically causes you grief? Give me 2 or 3.
Convenience.
Convenience. Okay.
You said yacht earlier, and I struggle with that one.
Well, what do you guess is going to be the story with yacht?
It's
I
not
don't know.
regular.
Horrible.
I bet it's I can't even remember. I bet it's borrowing or something. I don't know for sure. But we can look at it. But you said convenient. So I'm happy to do a word like that at an older level. And then if you want to try one at a younger level, we can.
Okay.
Now, convenience. So first of all, can you use the word for me?
It is a convenience to be able to go to the grocery store.
Okay, and I spelled it right. I've spelled it on the page. Now, you've shown me the meaning of it. So everybody at home should do this as well. I'm going to give you the letters of convenience without spelling out the structure because I don't want to give anything away. But just so everyone has got the right spelling, CONVENIENCE. I have to work hard to spell in letters, not morphemes and graphemes. Now, do me a favor, Melissa. Just don't think about it and spell that word out loud. Not letter by letter, just spell it.
CONVENIENCE.
Now, the first thing that I noticed is that you paused after the CON.
Uh-huh.
and you said the ENCE together.
Yes.
And then you were thinking all about it in here.
Yes.
Now I'm going to give you something. So I have a chart here that I'm showing with bases, prefixes, and suffixes, a morpheme chart. And so this might be a bit you want to play with. But if you look in here, we look at, oh, we already do have an ENC suffix. So we know that's a piece that's in the world. And we have a CON. But there's something in this word that you might not know about that I have on the chart. Do you
Okay.
see?
A Latin origin?
Yeah, there's something called a connecting vowel letter. And if you look at this chart, which we can make sure you get an image for your show notes or whatever, I have a morphemics element chart, and underneath it I have affixes and bases. And under bases, we have free bases and bound bases. Under affixes, we have prefixes, suffixes, and the suffixes are divided in consonant and vowel suffixes. And then we have these things called connecting vowel letters that most people don't know about. But the way they're on the chart tells you they are a kind of what? An affix or a base, Melissa?
They are an affix.
Right, because I put them in the chart that way. And I can say they act kind of like suffixes, but they're not suffixes because they can't be final.
Okay.
They connect on both sides. And I'm telling you that that is in this word. And so now I can see my ENCE and my CON, and now I have left a VEN. I can think of another word now that you might think of. Convenience. Can you think of another word that would start with the CON and have the VEN, but now something's missing?
VEN.
Convene.
Oh,
Well, no,
I
it
can
was taking me a
convene.
minute too.
But it takes a minute. But when kids do this, they know instantly if that's a connecting vowel letter or a vowel suffix, that means there could be an E that's replaced there.
Yeah.
So you get into the habit, and I'll show you videos of kids who do much more complicated things than what I'm doing right now and work without even the word sum. They do the word sum in their head. So the actual structure is CON plus VENE plus I plus ENCE, and then that replaces the E. So the final result, I'll spell out loud the structure: CON, VEN replace the E, I, ENCE, and that's convenience.
they
Now,
replace convey?
well, is convey related? That would be cool. Let's try it. Well, convey is CON plus VEY. Can't be the same base because it doesn't have a VENE.
All right, right.
And this is now the kind of word where we would likely go to Etym Online.
Yeah,
I
that's
feel
where
like I'm
And I
asking the
can-
dumbest questions. I'm sorry.
No, I'm right there with you. Don't worry.
No, these are exactly the right questions. And you see how I get to follow your questions, because that tells me the information you need right now.
Yeah.
So convenience, I'm going to spell CON, VEN, replace the E, I, ENCE. I can spell convenience so much more confidently now because I just did that, right? And what we see is we go to the history of it, we get all the way back to a root for venire, for come. So a convenience is for things coming together. The CON has this togetherness in it, right? If I take that root, I can paste that VENIRE Latin root,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to get all sorts of words. Intervenient, I don't even know that. Ooh, it's something. This achieve is somehow related, but it's a different base. Circumvent. This is a VENT base. It's a different base, but there's contravene to go against, right? And so we're going to find there's many different bases. Oh, souvenir, that's a cool one. There's many different bases that grow from this same root,
Interesting.
but they all have this idea of coming together, or the come part. When you have the COM with it, you get the together part, right? And convenience and convene, you can find out how they all link. And the reason I like taking that word on is that all words are explained by the system. So you picked one, I can do that. But now Amy wanted to do a younger word. And by the way, with that one, we could go make a builder matrix and other stuff, and I could send you a pile of words that you now are getting kids exposed to. And in the class that you would be working with convenience, in I don't know, whatever class, you're going to have kids who wouldn't be able to read book that would have a word like convenience in it, but they are given an invitation to the class that studies the link between convenience and convene and all sorts of other words. And so the kids are getting exposure for their biological spotlights to the spellings, meanings, and pronunciations of words that they wouldn't encounter if they were only able to do that by building it by words that they read.
Right. Right.
As I say, Shanahan is talking about leveled books, leveled lives, and how you got to get the kids stretching where they're from. Now, my argument, that's very true, but I would argue that the matrix and the word sum and etymological relatives is a means by which we can give kids experience with complex, interesting language at their intellectual and curiosity level, but way above the reading level as a means to rise their reading level,
Right.
because they have no interest in studying CVC words anymore when they're in grade 8.
Right.
And they haven't got there. You introduce kids to words like this, and you have their attention.
So then the pronunciation of convenience is a lot easier because they've got the V.
What's writing the thing that's interesting is what's writing the y. It's
Right.
the I.
Right. And then the ends is just teach
Yeah.
that as the
ANCE,
suffix, right?
ENCE. Yeah.
So Dr. Bowers, I need you when I teach my teachers, because they'll say, what about this word? What about this word? And I'm just like, and I always say, that's a good research question. We'll come back to
Yeah.
it.
But see, you could have picked a word that I could have started on and got lost on and said, well, that's a great one. I'm going to have to come back with you. And that would have been fine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's how many words I still need to think about. I was a very good reader. I wouldn't say I was a horrible speller, but I wasn't a great speller. My mom and my sister were great spellers. But I guess where I feel like what you talked about earlier is where I am. I learned to get by on my spelling because I was a good reader.
Yeah.
And I learned to like just visually identify words.
But see, your spelling accuracy has likely not shifted much
Right.
from your increased reading, but all the reading you've done, because your schema is the same for spelling. But if I change your schema such that as a habit of mind, you are looking for spelling meaning correspondences, your spelling will shift and the way you look at words will shift.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite stories is I got from a teacher in one of my online courses was the grade 4 kid comes to school and says, Mrs. Burgee, I can't stop thinking about words.
Aw.
She's talking about him at home all the time. And that morning in the shower, she saw on the shampoo bottle the word stronger and thought about, wait a second, you don't pronounce that G in strong. Now, this is the point about back to the statistical learning. And this was a kid who was struggling before, right? So that kind of motivation comes because nothing motivates like understanding. And if you're in grade 4 and you feel like you have no understanding, and all of a sudden the teacher is giving you understanding, you think about it in the shower when you see something. Like, because they have spelling meaning correspondence as part of their repertoire of looking at stuff, they're seeing it all the time. So I'm willing to predict, Melissa, if you do this work, you will see your spelling accuracy improve. But I remember in my first year of doing this stuff, I'm old, it was 2001, and I typed a note from a parent letter. And I got to the end and it was old enough that you didn't spell check along the way. At the end, you would press the spell check button. I pressed the spell check button and nothing happened. So I think it's broken. So I pressed it again. I could not believe that I had written a page of text without a single spelling error.
Oh, yeah.
Like that never, ever, ever happened. I didn't even believe the machine was working because it was such an absurdity. But nothing had changed my spelling accuracy until that shift. And this is kind of back to the original question about from the start. I think it is very reasonable that we should be training teachers such that they have an accurate schema of how the writing system works, which allows them to teach in such a way that strives to give kids an accurate frame, an accurate schema, and the messages that they need to get is that your spelling system is an incredibly fascinating, organized system. It's complicated, but it's not irregular. That's the reality. So why wouldn't we teach that?
Right.
And then we can say, and the thing that it does is it represents aspects of how you pronounce words and aspects of what they mean in the connection. And you can do that with the S suffix. You can teach do and does right off the bat, not as a sight word that you have to memorize. Misusing of the word sight word there, sorry, but not as a word that you have to teach by rote, but you can say, well, if I say the sentence, she does her work. Now make the sentence, I wouldn't say I does my work. What would I say, Melissa?
I am doing my work.
But
Or
if
I
you just
do
use
my
the one
work.
word, I do my work. And yours is fine too. That's it worked. I don't say I does my work.
Right.
And a kindergartner knows that.
Mm.
And if they don't, they need to know that.
Mhm.
So, oh, how do you write the do? Oh, that's the D-O. Oh, it's not the D-E-W. It's not the D-U-E. It's the D-O. And now let's look at does. How can you tap out does for me, Melissa? Naming the
Oh.
graphemes of the base.
D-O-E-S.
Now, say does.
Does.
What do you feel at the beginning?
D. D.
How do you write the D in does?
D.
With the D grapheme.
D.
And what's writing the of does?
O.
Yeah. So it's D-O-E-S. How do you pronounce the D-O in the word I do my work?
Do.
Right. How do you pronounce it in doing, like I am doing my work?
Do.
How do you pronounce it in does, as in she does her work? You don't say does, you say does.
Mm-hmm.
And the ES is writing z. And so we can use the word does as an introduction to the schema that spelling represents meaning and pronunciation from the start, instead of does being like one of those words that is a weight on learning because it's another irregular word to memorize. It's a doorway into understanding how spelling represents pronunciation and meaning. And the big schema message that I need the teachers to understand so that the kids can get is that in terms of spelling consistency, meaning is the center of gravity, not pronunciation. Spelling represents meaning more consistently than pronunciation in English. And that's not a bug, it's a feature.
We should make that into a sampler and put it like in everybody's class.
Yes. Yes.
So we're getting close to wrapping it up, but if you hear this podcast and you tell people, hey, I was just on the Dyslexia Duo, what would you hope everybody would walk away with from listening to this podcast that you just did today?
Well, I make the argument, and with an audio podcast, it's hard to see, but we'll have links to stuff. The argument is that this matrix and word sum is a necessary tool for understanding how our writing system works. And it's because, as we've seen today, it provides the possibility of falsification. We need the word sum in the matrix to understand that TION isn't just not a suffix in action, it's not a suffix in question in a million words, right? And then we can see there's no TI. And we cannot refine our understanding if we don't have falsification, because if we don't have falsification, we don't have science. Right? So the message I'm trying to convey here is that the matrix and the word sum, they are not the destination of structured word inquiry. They're the doorway. It's the way that you can understand grapheme phoneme correspondence. It was the only way I can understand why really has two L's and surreal has two R's, and why reality tells me that I can't spell real with an R-double-E-L. All of the things that grabs the dyslexics are how the spelling meaning correspondences make sense of the grapheme phoneme correspondences. But from the outside, it looks like it's morphology. So if you're interested in this work, the one thing you have to recognize is I'm making a bold claim that you shouldn't agree with because I say it. I'm saying English spelling makes unbelievably good sense, and you can study it scientifically. And I've given evidence today of a bunch of spellings that people probably couldn't explain before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm arguing that that is all the evidence you need, that whether you agree with everything I say or you don't isn't the point. But there's obviously something here. If I can explain the spelling of does in 2 minutes like I just did, and I have videos of me teaching young kids that I can link for you, well, there's something that is missing from your current instruction if you thought does was irregular. So the point is just begin the process of this. And I have a book that was from my lessons in my intervention study that I did that introduced structured word inquiry that takes you through stuff. But there's so many resources out there. High frequency word project I highly recommend. Sue Heglin's Beneath the Surface of Words.
I was making a lot of connections because we had her on the podcast last year with her Beneath the Surface of Words book, and she's coming out with a part 2 is what she said.
Yeah. I think that is a book that everybody who's teaching literacy in English should read.
I put it on my book list for them to read.
Yeah, because it's such an accessible walk through the basics of what I've just been talking about in one book. I'll send you a list of things to explore. But the other thing is you think about how many hours of study you've done in order to teach the current instruction you've been doing.
Right.
Think about when a new program that came along and you got the training you did for the new program. You can't expect that you can listen to a podcast and get it.
Right.
The point of the podcast is for me to give people enough understanding that they're motivated to go check it out more.
Right.
And if you do that, I recommend taking some courses.
Yeah.
And like I do courses that are like online and in real time, but there's all sorts of people who do these courses. The other thing that I should mention is every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I have a free SWI digital drop-in. So you don't have to pay anything to just come and ask a question anytime. People come regularly and you don't have to ask a question. You can just come and hear what the questions are. But when people take my courses, I don't want them to have to pay money every time they have a question.
Right.
So this is like office hours. And so you don't have to take a course. It's just
And how would they find that?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
On my website, and I'll give you the links. It's there. And there's another person who started one in the UK, and she does hers on Thursdays at her noon, which is like 7:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time.
Ooh.
But so for some people, that time there's another option of a group that's doing the same thing. That's great. I just did a workshop in Bristol that she came to.
Oh, wow.
So it's really great. The point is, and ideally, like you guys are already, like find a colleague to study it with. You want a study buddy.
Yeah.
So that ideally you take a course with a study buddy, because then you can talk to each other and work through things and then come back with your questions and you've got a common background. So I will say my website is a mess, but you can find links. I try to point to everybody doing this stuff. Then my YouTube channel is full of videos of kids doing this stuff or orthographic concepts and such. So I encourage people to explore.
Okay,
Awesome.
so PeteBowers.com.
Wordworkskingston.com.
Wordworkskingston.com.
Yeah. And I have a Facebook page, it's WordWorks, that I'm posting a lot of stuff on. I'll give you the links for all this stuff.
Okay.
And one of the things I'll point to, there's a video of a TEDx talk I did that's about 18 minutes or something. And I just think of that as like a gentle introduction to the big picture that gives a sense of not only how the writing system works, but why it makes sense that we've misunderstood it, but why we need to shift that. And there's another one, I kept mentioning this big old word, combinatorial. So I'll highlight this video, really shows the structure of English orthography, how the matrix reflects that structure in a way that helps us understand, and lots of guidance of using etymology and etymological family, all that stuff. So that I think will be good follow-ups for your listeners.
I guess I have one final question for you. If you were to think about different curriculums, your structured word inquiry, what we do is a lot of Orton Gillingham, of course, Take Flight, NTA, those types of programs. Is there a way to incorporate all of these into one big happy family, or do you prefer one? Like, what do you think?
So one thing I'll ask you to remind me is I have an article, or I don't know what you call it, but a post from a long time ago that the title is something like, how do I integrate what I'm learning from SWI with my practice?
Right.
Because it's such a logical question. And the message that I say is when people hear this podcast or they see a workshop and they see this stuff and they go, oh my God, I can't believe this makes sense. What I don't want people to do is leave that with the question, what should I drop of my current instruction? Right. Instead, if you understood something in this podcast that you didn't understand before, you can spell does, you can explain action, whatever it was, that's all the evidence you need that that's something you can tell your kids. So if your current instruction tells you to say does is irregular, I would recommend you no longer have to do that. You
Yeah.
can explain that one, right?
Right.
But people will think that they misunderstand what I'm saying. Of course, it's new stuff. And they'll think that I said you shouldn't do X or Y. And when I see them the next year, well, I thought you said don't do that. No, I never said that. So don't worry about what you should drop. Just start integrating these new things. As I say, the matrix and the word sum and what a word family is, that's the starting point from which you understand how grapheme phoneme corresponds work and how morphemes work and how etymology works. And then you build over time. And so the final part of that story that I love is that there was a teacher that was in California when I first went out there, who was a special ed teacher at the school I went to. And she took me around and I did my stuff. And I could kind of tell that I don't think she was convinced. And she wasn't, but she was totally fine. But then she left that school and went somewhere else. And she kept doing this thing. Here's one simple thing that I encourage your people to try. The simplest teaching idea in SWI. When you're reading with a kid, if the kid's reading out loud to you and they miscue a word, the most common instruction is try to sound it out.
Right.
I recommend you try the simplest thing and say, could you spell it out for me?
Oh,
Yeah.
Just replace the word sound with the spell and see what happens. And I'm telling the story because this is what grabbed Kim, even though she was skeptical. When you do that, you are forcing the kid to have their eyes walk their brain through the structure of the word before they make their guess. And when you bring that precision of attention by spelling out, I have teachers regularly tell me, holy cow, they self-correct half the time.
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's what Kim did. And she took it to her new school where she's teaching grade 1. And that is what got her going. When I came to her school, it was like hilarious. It was her grade 1 room was just filled with matrices, word sums, graphing phoneme diagram. And she was rocking. And then she went to another school. And then 4 years down the line, she comes to my summer course. And she's now seen multiple workshops from me. And so this time, and she's bringing her new school colleagues. And I say, so Kim, I'm really curious to know, what did you get out of this session that was new? Because she'd been to intensive workshops like 3 years in a row. And she says, I think I'm finally able to drop some things I thought I'd never drop. That's how you shift your instruction, not by doing what somebody told you,
Right.
but by interrogating what somebody told you to see if it worked. And then if it's working, you keep going, even if you're surprised. And then if the things you don't find work, you don't do. It doesn't matter if I said it. Right? And then you can get to the point where you can replace what you thought was something you would never give up, because you now find I'm not doing that anymore because I'm doing this other thing. And it wasn't even a process necessarily of a conscious decision. So that's my message, is don't just drop something. There's tons of stuff you're doing that's very helpful right now. The question is how to take your time to make this new schema that reflects the actual working of the writing system, because that statistical learning that we want kids to do should be based on the structures in the system, not the structures that we perceive, that unfortunately we are building misperceptions of structures, right? So we have to work to undo those things. There's a funny phrase that I get from other places that I love, is that people talk about being disillusioned like it's a bad thing. Who wants to be illusioned?
That's funny. Well, this has been so great. My
Yeah.
head actually hurts a little bit from thinking.
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
You're rewiring my brain as we
I
speak.
look a little incoherent because I've been trying to keep, you can't see this with the background, but I'm trying to keep up. And I have like just snippets of words: proficiency, ascertain, play, full, ing, ed, biological spotlight.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to come back to this and go, what the hell was I doing?
Excellent.
But I'm trying to keep
So
up with things that stuck out with me, and I would write it down.
So perhaps a good way to end is to leave with one more word
Okay.
for you and your audience to consider.
Okay.
So I'm picking a word that even accurate spellers often will make a mistake. So don't be shy or worried if you make a spelling mistake, which we shouldn't be if you're dyslexic either. So I want you to write the word exorbitant as if I wanted to buy tickets to the show, but they were exorbitant.
This is not right. I got and something in the middle, and then
Okay. Now,
I have EXORBONANT.
okay. Now check it out. I was writing exorbitant in an email one day and I got the big red line and I couldn't spell it. And so I go to my dictionary and I'll share the screen to show you. So I go to my dictionary and I do what Melissa did. I'm writing exorbitant, so I go EXHOR, and I keep getting exhort and exhibit, and I keep not getting exorbitant. And it's like, what? And finally, I try it without the H.
Oh.
And now it comes up, and I'm going to put it here.
Why did I think there was me?
the X.
Now, I want you to notice something.
Mm.
The second I saw this spelling, I knew what my errors were. I had put an H in there, but there can't be. And I had used a D where the T is, I had put exorbitant as if it was BID. I'm going to sound. But when I see this word, I instantaneously know why there can't be an H and why there has to be a T. Can you tell me why?
Because the base word is orbit.
Because we have a base in there. We can take it as the base, and it may be the base of orbit. And why is that valuable?
Orbit.
Because it's out of this world. It's exorbitant. It's out of this orbit.
Oh, good
Right?
Lord. Now I can spell
And
it.
and now I know why there's no H, because there's no EXH prefix, but I have a visual memory. This is the statistical learning that Melissa and I both had. You often get an EXH like in exhort and exhibit, but in exhibit, it's an HIBIT that comes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now there's one part of this word that I can still make a spelling mistake on. Guess what that is?
ANT.
Whether it's ANT or ENT,
Yeah.
I have yet to automate.
That I'm
And
saying.
you know why? Because there's no spelling meaning distinction that I could use to remember it. There's not a meaning difference between the ANT and the ENT.
Mm.
But there is a difference between an EX prefix and an EXH that isn't a prefix, and an orbit that is a word, but no ORBID, right? So it's a perfect word to show, for me, I kind of probably get the ANT right maybe 80% of the time, but I'm never confident because I still do not have an orthographic memory that can fix words that it doesn't understand.
Right.
I'm never going to change the born quality of my orthographic memory. Whatever gives me that's what I got. What I can change is how I pack it.
Right.
Right? What I can do is do what we say in that reading triangle, link the pronunciation, spellings, and meanings, and I'm going to show my brain and every else brain I can that we have spelling meaning correspondences that explain grapheme phoning correspondences, and there are only two kinds of spelling meaning correspondences. Those we get from morphology with the consistent spelling of the morphemes, despite the pronunciation changes, and from etymology. So we get spelling meaning correspondence like the W in to, or the L that's in should that you can see from shall, and the L from would that you can see in will. They're not grapheme phoning correspondences, they're grapheme meaning correspondences because you don't pronounce the L in would, right? It's a grapheme, it's just not writing a phoneme. And if we don't know this information, people act like it's too complex for young kids. But I'm begging you to consider what is the effect of having a kid who has a bad orthographic memory, weak phonological processing, and they build their literacy mind in a context in which they are told most of the time they have a spelling question, you got to memorize it. That is a devastating cognitive load. I don't know any cognitive load that is heavier than shame of failure. And if you aren't even signaling that there's a way out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's why that really thing grabbed my brain like a unbelievably, because I assumed there's no explanation for this. And then you say there is? I mean, and there's an explanation all over the system,
Yeah.
such that I can run into the word exorbitant. I didn't have anybody teach me it. I had learned how to investigate it. And once I understand it, I got it.
Wow.
Amazing. Yay. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
this has been wonderful. I mean, my gosh, we have material for months now. You gave us so much information.
Well, it's a real treat. And you guys are obviously keen learners. I really appreciate you guys willing to just jump in with this stuff, because when I teach kids the same way I teach teachers. That's another thing that bugs me. It's like people act like people learn differently when they're younger than when they're older. Like learning is connecting the known to the unknown, whatever age you are.
Right. Right.
And the shame is still there. Like getting the answers wrong, I feel so shameful and I'm embarrassed.
I see you apologizing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm embarrassed.
And that's what we have to build in our classrooms and tutoring, is let's get rid of any shame of making mistakes. It is anti-learning. It is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about hypotheses because your hypothesis is not bad because it turns out not to be true. You hypothesize to test it so that you can understand. It doesn't matter if your hypothesis turned out to be right or not. What matters is if testing it taught you something.
I love
Very
it.
good. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Bauer.
you. Yes, for sure. So this is Amy.
And Melissa.
And we're the
Dyslexia Duo.
Until next time.
Hey.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dyslexia Duo hosts are Melissa Dean
And Amy Rodenroth. The producer is Greg Rodenroth.
Dyslexia awareness is so important. Please share with your friends, family, and anyone who needs to know more about dyslexia.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at The Dyslexia Duo.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.